was on vacation this last week at the beach. While I was gone, Borderlands came out. Well, let's talk about it. Hi, my name is Sean, and I love to talk about movies and TV way too much. With that in mind, go ahead and join me down below in the comments section. Let me know what you think about Borderlands and give me that point of reference. Have you played the games, or are you coming in just as someone that was excited because of the movie trailer? As for me, I have not played the games. I don't really know anything about the lore. I just saw the movie trailer. It seemed like Eli Roth's Guardians of the Galaxy, which made me a little bit interested in the project. And then as we grew closer, there were more and more red flags all around this thing. So by the time I actually watched it, my expectations were very low for the project. And going into it, I actually did a good bit of research on the making of this film because I was trying to figure out what on earth happened that this very popular video game series would turn into a movie whose Rotten Tomatoes score debuted at a 0%. Essentially, Gearbox Software, the company behind the video games, has been trying to get a movie made since 2011. Back in 2015, Lee Winnell was in talks to write and direct the project. He wrote the first Saw movie, he did the Insidious films, and then went on to direct Upgrade as well as The Invisible Man from a few years back. And then they officially announced the project, but he wasn't attached to it. They brought some different writers in, worked on it for several years, and then they kind of did a total reset of the project in 2020. They announced that Eli Roth was going to direct the film, and Craig Mazin was going to write the script. Now, at the time, Craig was getting a lot of praise for his work on Chernobyl, and then since 2020, he went on to do The Last of Us. And so he's gotten tremendous acclaim over the last several years. So there was a lot of excitement that he was the one that was writing the script. And the buzz surrounding Mazin's draft was great. Big Screen Leaks said this: "I hope someone leaks Mazin's draft. I've heard nothing but absolutely phenomenal things about it." And then jump forward in 2021, Cate Blanchett signed on to be a part of it, and then the rest of the cast joined in. And as the casting announcements came out, they started discussing more writers that had come in to work on the script, how Eli Roth did a pass on the script, but they shot the movie in 2021. And then it just sat there for years. And finally, in 2023, 2 years later, they did reshoots, and they announced that another writer had come in to write new scenes to try and clean things up a little bit. The director, Eli Roth, who also wrote the script, couldn't do the reshoots because he was working on the movie Thanksgiving. So Tim Miller, the director of Deadpool as well as Terminator Dark Fate, he came in and shot the reshoots for the movie. And right around this exact same time period, Craig Mazin, the guy that in 2020 was really exciting that it was announced that he was going to be the one writing the script, petitioned to have his name removed from the credits. And so this is 2 years after principal photography. He's like, I want my name off of this thing. Don't put my name on this. I didn't write this. And suddenly a new writer was attached to the project, Joe Crombie. Depending on where you look his name up, it says Joe Abercrombie. Depending on where you look up data on all of this, it is credited as Craig Mazin's pseudonym. Craig Mazin was asked, "Are you Joe Crombie?" And he adamantly denied that he is credited for the film. He said he doesn't know if that is a pseudonym for anyone, but it is not his pseudonym. He repeated, he is not the writer of this movie. But Joe Crombie is not a real person. So it's a pseudonym for someone. Adding to all the confusion on all of this, the stunt coordinator over the last week gave an interview where he said, "We were shooting an R-rated movie when we did it. So we were blowing people's heads off. We were cutting feet off. We were doing all of that." Literally, the idea and the brief was carnage, heads cutting off, feet cutting off, go for it. Of course, Eli Roth loves horror, and he was like, just cut the ankles off. Yeah, get the knife and cut the ankles off. We could leave the stubs. And so they shot this ultra-violent film that was designed to be rated R. The movie that was released is PG-13. And so you have this movie where we don't know what did go on behind the scenes. All we know is that it wasn't smooth. It was pretty ugly. And you have to keep in mind, for 3 years, Craig Mazin was the person that we were told wrote the script for it. Everyone was excited about this. And this is when they do the reshoots, and then he petitions to have his name removed. It seems like the movie dramatically changed. Like, why on earth did Cate Blanchett sign on to this movie? How do you get Kevin Hart, Jamie Lee Curtis? How do you get all this talent? Well, whatever the script was in 2021 when they signed on, that is not the movie that has been released. That's the background you have to have as you go into this movie and realize it was a mess of a production for whatever reason. But was the movie good? So, is this a good movie? No, this is a bad movie. But there are bad movies that are boring, there are bad movies that are irritating, there are bad movies that are pretentious, there's bad movies that are offensive. This is a high-energy bad movie, which makes it more watchable, in particular if you like this genre. It's a watchable enough, poorly made film. In theory, this movie is very much my kind of thing. I like big sci-fi worlds that we get to explore with all this different technology and creatures and subcultures. I like that kind of thing. This might not be a good version of it, but I like this kind of thing. Sort of like bad pizza, it's still pizza, and that's the case with this movie for me. If you've seen the trailer, pretty obviously they're going for a Guardians of the Galaxy vibe. The nature of the video games, as I understand it, they're pretty wild and wacky, filled with humor, insane creature designs, things like that, violence, language. And so inherently you're working from a bunch of ingredients designed to entertain. Does it work? No, it does not. But it's much more fun to watch something move quickly from action set piece to failed joke to weird thing to big bombastic special effects bit. That's more entertaining even when done poorly than watching a slow, bad horror film or something like that. There's just more entertainment value to it. Also, they were able to get a solid cast of people. So despite the fact that most all of their characters fell flat and the humor doesn't really work, you are watching people that at least are interesting on screen or they're committed to their part. There's something there that makes it better than dreadful. Once again, it's not a good movie, but it is a high energy bad movie. It is a bad movie trying to entertain you, and it doesn't overstay its welcome. But as we just said, repeatedly, it's not a good movie. So let's move on to the bad and unpack this mess. So the reason I kicked off this review by giving the backstory of how the film was made was both because I find that sort of thing interesting, but also because I think it's really important to understand why this movie is the way that it is. There are plenty of examples of movies that went through development hell and at the end of it, the movie turned out okay. But a lot of the times when you have projects like this, where they know they want to make a movie, but there's not a unified vision on how to do that, and there's not one script that everyone's excited about, you end up in this situation where there's just too many cooks in the kitchen, there's too many opinions, and the script gets passed to too many different hands, and it just gets lost amongst all the ideas. And that's what this movie feels like. Something where every producer got their say. Eli Roth got his say. Mason got a little bit of his say. Whoever Crombie is got his say. And there's just all these ideas that never come together into one cohesive, singular vision. It's just a bunch of things mashed together. So an obvious example of this is the cast. The individual cast members are great actors, actresses, entertainers, comedians that have done amazing things. But they have no chemistry with one another. So it's a bunch of pieces mashed together, and since they don't fit, something's just off in all the banter. The jokes fall flat. When they're like playing off of each other, it just feels like they never found their rhythm and their routine. So it's just kind of awkward and clunky in the wrong ways. The individuals are great, but the pieces, when pulled together, don't fit. That is kind of the microcosm of this whole film, the example of what's wrong with the whole movie. Pieces that should be more entertaining than they are, that don't go together. Having not played the video games, I don't know which elements of the characterizations and the plot come from the games, but the movie is very derivative as a film. Right out of the gate, it starts copying jokes from other movies. The first joke in the film is straight out of Spaceballs, and then there's a joke straight out of Star Wars, and the whole movie feels like it's stealing jokes from better movies. The plot has a number of similarities to Guardians of the Galaxy in the nature of what kind of pulls the group together, and big reveals about characters feel reminiscent of Guardians of the Galaxy. And then other times when it's not derivative, it just feels like plot points, twists, turns, reveals just come out of nowhere. Like they weren't set up anywhere earlier in the film in any meaningful way. And then they're played in the third act of the film as the big payoff. Like, see, we did it. We're victorious. See who it really is. And you're like, what? Where did any of this come from? Once again, going back to a situation where they started with someone else's script and then they passed it from writer to writer to writer, and then the rewriter came in and then they reworked it in the editing room. And when you do that, you suddenly have plot points that feel like they came out of nowhere, or plot points that go absolutely nowhere, or character arcs that you're building up to something that never happens, or you pay off something out of nowhere. It's not set up. And that's what the whole back half of this movie feels like. And other times in the movie, it's very obvious when they trimmed things out of the film in order to kind of get things going a little bit sooner, get the gang together faster. So as an example, when Cate Blanchett first gets to the main planet, there's this part where it goes into voiceover of her describing the planet. And clearly there was this whole sequence of what happened when she first got to the planet that would probably been 5-10 minutes long, and then they turn it into 30 seconds of her just giving voiceover of what happened, and they just show her in this big shootout meeting all these characters, and they just explain it with voiceover so we can get things moving a little bit faster. That's the kind of movie that you're watching, where it's very obvious all the places where they cut things and they had to duct tape it together and rework it afterwards. It's not good. And in particular, when you're watching a $120 million version of that, just duct taping a film together while still having an enormous budget with gigantic movie stars, some of them with Oscars, and we're duct taping it together, it just highlights how messy of a production this was. Here's what my son had to say about the film.
So we just got out of the theater from watching the movie event of the summer, Not Alien Romulus, Borderlands, the movie that debuted with a 0% on Rotten Tomatoes.
I liked it. I think it's overrated, but the story is enjoyable. I think it should have a higher rating.
0% felt a bit low to you?
Yeah.
There you have it.
Real quick before I give you my final thoughts, remember to join me down below in the comment section. Let me know, what did you think about the movie, and have you played the games? You can check out my thoughts on some other video game adaptations somewhere around here. I did a ranking of the highest grossing video game movies a few years back. Also covered like Fallout, Last of Us, some better adaptations from the last few years. I went into this movie having heard that a bunch of people were declaring this potentially the worst movie of the year. It's in competition with Madam Web to be the worst blockbuster of the year. I didn't feel it was that bad, simply because this is my kind of film, this is my genre, and so going off to these sci-fi environments with quips and action, I like that kind of thing. I enjoy that sort of thing, but it's not good. Almost everything feels off. Very clearly, it's a movie that they were constantly reworking all along the way, so there's no cohesive vision. Plot points aren't set up, so they can't be paid off, or they come out of nowhere. It's a mess of a film, but not a boring mess of a film. Overall, it's a C- on the entertainment scale of 5 out of 10, and you can skip this movie. If you do catch it on cable or streaming, you'll probably be like, oh, that wasn't as bad as I thought it was going to be, but you still won't think it's very good. Let me know your thoughts down below, and keep talking movies and TV too much. Bye-bye.